Hello, I'm Dr Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the podcast. I hope wherever you're listening in from that you're well and you're taking really good care of yourself. Today, I am talking to you about self-compassion. This is a tool I really want you to have in your toolkit if you don't already. It's certainly something that I draw on regularly. There are almost 4,000 studies on the benefits of self-compassion. And the benefits include less depression, less anxiety, less stress, less shame, less post-traumatic stress disorder, less suicidal ideation, alcohol abuse, and eating disorders, more hope, more motivation, and better health. These are just some of the benefits of the practice of self-compassion. So you can understand why this is something I feel really strongly to share with you and to help you bring into your daily life and to that of your family as well. Well, before we talk about self-compassion, I'd really like to start by talking about compassion and compassion for other people, because really it's about understanding compassion for others and then turning those same ideas and attitudes and thoughts and feelings towards ourselves. So when we talk about compassion for others, we firstly need to notice that other people are suffering. Compassion actually involves being moved by the suffering of others, and compassion actually means to suffer with. In this way, our hearts are responding to another person's pain. The warmth and the sense of caring that we feel as a result of that type of connection, it really inspires us to want to help in some way, to want to do something to support that person. We show kindness, we show understanding, not judgment or pity. And when we feel compassion for another person, it really shows our own understanding, our own personal understanding that pain, loss, imperfection, suffering, all of these are just a part of our shared experience as people, as humans. When we show ourselves compassion, it's termed self-compassion. And what this involves, as I mentioned before, is about treating ourselves in the very same way as I just described about compassion for others. When we're going through a hard time, when we get things wrong, when we make mistakes, when we overreact, or we behave in ways that we're not proud of, or we really notice something that we don't like about ourselves. When it comes to self-compassion, it's really important to understand that there are some myths surrounding it. And I really want to debunk these myths before we talk more about how to practice compassion for yourself. Self-compassion is not self-pity. It's actually about recognizing our common humanity and that it is natural to struggle at times. And one of the things that I live with day to day is recognizing that for every person we meet, for every person that we make contact with, they're at the center of their own universe of friends and families and colleagues and children and connections, and that we don't ever know what people are going through. We know ourselves that while things might appear one way from the outside looking in, that we all experience struggle and pain and suffering, and that we really never do know what other people are going through. And so to move through life, treating others with kindness and this understanding that we all have this common humanity of struggle and suffering and pain at different stages of our life, on different days, on different weeks, I think it's a really beautiful way to start thinking about other people. Self-compassion is not self-indulgent. This is not about recognizing that we're struggling or that we're suffering and giving ourselves permission to do whatever it is that we'd like to do to try to cheer ourselves up. It's not about that. It's not about trying to alleviate that. It's about having an openness and a willingness to recognize our suffering and to show ourselves kindness and care. It's not about cracking open the ice cream and sitting down and watching a day's worth of Netflix because we're experiencing a lot of stress, because that doesn't contribute to our long-term health, happiness, and well-being. And lastly, self-compassion is not self-esteem. Self-compassion is not based on self-evaluation. Every single one of us deserves compassion, kindness, and understanding. Self-compassion has 3 elements. Number 1, self-kindness versus self-judgment. When we're self-compassionate, when we show ourselves the compassion that we would show other people, we're warm, we're kind, and we're caring towards ourselves. We show ourselves understanding rather than criticism and frustration. For those of us who are parents, when we do this out loud in front of our children, we are showing acceptance for our humanity, for our struggle and our challenge, and we're role modeling a beautiful attitude. And hopefully, those of us who are parents can begin to teach this to our children in more didactic or more direct ways over time as well. The second element of self-compassion is the idea of common humanity versus isolation. It's easy to feel as though we're the only ones struggling with our experience when we don't keep in mind the common humanity of suffering. I remember when I was really struggling with my mental health, particularly when I was experiencing depression. And it was at a time when mental health was not understood in the same way that it is now. The words anxiety and depression were not even part of my vocabulary. And I really felt like I'm the only person on the face of this planet who is going through this. No one will ever understand, and there won't be any help for me. I'm alone in this. And that's a really isolating, painful place to come from. One of the elements, this really powerful element of self-compassion, is recognizing that suffering, failure, mistakes, and imperfection is all very much a part of being human. We all suffer. It's very much part of the human experience. And I really invite you to be mindful of who you're connected with online, because when we're constantly looking at the highlight reels of other people's lives, it's hard to remember that we all share this in common. We all have this common humanity. And I really urge you to follow people who really keep it real. And Mia Friedman, just this week on her Instagram, she was away. I think she was initially celebrating a friend's birthday, and she had a friend back home who was experiencing a lot of envy. Wouldn't it be nice to head overseas and have a lovely holiday in the sun? And so Mia shared photographs that would evoke not an ounce of envy or admiration. So she took photos of herself with bins, with chairs, with things that were insignificant and uninteresting. And I thought that showed a great sense of humour and what a beautiful friend she was. So it's important for us, I think, on our social media to really follow the people who make us feel good, who make us feel like we're a part of a common humanity and not different or isolated or not good enough. And so one of the things I'd really love you to do as a part of listening to this episode is just have a think about whose posts pop up in your feed that don't make you feel good, where there's that comparison that maybe makes you feel less than, and just unfollow them. You don't need to know what's going on in their lives. I did this recently, and it's such a good feeling to open up your feed if you want to spend a little bit of time on Instagram and feel good and be uplifted and being inspired and feel like part of the human experience, not somewhere on the outside. The third element of self-compassion involves mindfulness versus over-identification. And with this comes a willingness to notice. This is the mindfulness. Notice and acknowledge how we think and feel, to allow our thoughts and feelings to be as they are without judgment, without attempting to suppress how we feel. It's like pushing that beach ball under the water. It's exhausting. It's time consuming. It stops us from being able to do other things. And eventually we know what happens with that beach ball when we run out of the energy to be able to focus on holding it down. When we deny how we feel, we're really prolonging and amplifying the suffering. And so this element of self-compassion is about mindfully noticing and knowing that it is okay to feel all feelings. When we name how we feel, we can immediately help to settle the experience of that feeling, and we move through how we feel. We move through how we feel. We need to allow ourselves to do that. The beautiful Dr. Kristen Neff, she says we cannot ignore our pain and feel compassion for it at the same time. And so this practice of self-compassion is about noticing and observing and allowing how we feel to just be. Practicing self-compassion is something that we can do on a daily basis as part of our routine, maybe a morning ritual. There are so many beautiful exercises that you can bring into your days. And when we do this, we can more easily and more mindfully draw on our self-compassion when we are experiencing a moment of suffering. I really would like all of us to keep in mind self-compassion is not aimed at alleviating pain and suffering. It's a loving practice of accepting that we are in a moment of suffering, embracing ourselves with care, kindness, and acceptance, and reminding ourselves that suffering is indeed part of the human experience. One particular practice, this is the practice that I use, is called a self-compassion break. So I'm only going to share one practice with you today, and I'm going to direct you to a beautiful set of resources that will enable you to trial other types of self-compassion, other self-compassion practices to find the right fit for you, depending on what it is that you enjoy and what your experience is right now. In a self-compassion break, we can say 3 things to ourselves, and there are variations on these. You don't have to say exactly this, but the 3 steps during a self-compassion break are these. And I naturally find myself putting my hand on my heart when I'm practicing compassion for myself. The first thing I say is, this is a moment of suffering. And I might dwell there for a moment to recognize that what I'm experiencing is sad or uncomfortable or frustrating. And I take a moment just to notice and observe that I am experiencing this moment of pain and suffering. The next thing I say to myself is that suffering is a part of life, and it helps us feel less alone in that moment. And the third step during a self-compassion break is to say, may I be kind to myself? And you might sit in that for a moment. You might contemplate whether or not you need to be more patient with yourself or show yourself forgiveness. You might like to do something really beautiful for yourself, like make a nice warm cup or a nice cold drink, or spend some time with your pet, go outside and experience some sunshine. Take care of yourself, showing yourself the kindness that you would somebody you love and care about. Dr. Kristen Neff, as I mentioned at the opening of this podcast episode, is a pioneer in this field. She's a very special human, and the work that she's doing, her colleagues are doing, is really changing how we can support ourselves in times of need. And when we practice this and we teach it to our children and to our friends and to other family members, we really are giving such a beautiful gift. I'd like to quote her one more time before finishing up. She says, "The goal of the practice is simply to become a compassionate mess. Don't aim to get it right. We're actually aiming to open our hearts and be open to whatever is painful in that moment." When it comes to anxiety, we can not only experience the discomfort and the challenge of anxiety. Sometimes anxiety gets in the way of us doing the things that are really important. That's another beautiful opportunity to practice self-compassion, and also to be mindfully aware of what it is that you might like to do differently for growth, to motivate yourself to be able to move forward with the anxiety that you are experiencing, the anxiety that is a challenge for you. For those of us who experience anxiety, sometimes we can react in ways that we're not proud of, that we would prefer to wind the clock back on and react or respond, as I like to say, in a different way. Just last night, I was snuggling in bed with our daughter, which I just love to do, snuggle in bed with her and give her a bit of a cuddle and a bit of a chat. And in the dark, she reached out and accidentally whacked me on the head, and I reacted a little bit, and we cuddled a little bit more, and we were sort of talking about the day, and she stretched and reached out and rolled over and she whacked me again. And I really reacted because I'd been up since 4 a.m. I hadn't slept well. And I said, I think it's time for me to go. She said, yes, Mum, I think it's time for you to go. And she had a good sense of humor about it. And I have compassion for myself in that moment. It was a minor reaction, but it wasn't really the way I wanted to end the day with her as I was snuggling her in and kissing her goodnight. So whether it's a small moment or it's something that's really ongoing and painful, like grief or suffering or pain, discomfort, thoughts and feelings that are really difficult, self-compassion is something that I hope you might bring into your toolkit, start practicing and start putting into practice when you need it. Thank you for joining me. Thank you so much. I love it when it's just you and me. I really do. I think it's extra special, and I really do hope that you can take what you've learned today and put it into practice. I really do advocate for learning. I'm a lifelong learner, and then doing something, putting into practice what it is that you learn in a small way, remembering that small hinges swing big doors. Take care. Thanks again for being a part of this beautiful community. Thank you for all my beautiful messages of thanks and gratitude. Thank you for your beautiful ratings and reviews. And I wish you well for the rest of the week. Take care, and I will see you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.